Everyone, welcome to this webinar on SoCalGas, Benzene, Aliso Canyon, and your health. My name is Deirdre Bolona, and I have been actively fighting to shut down Aliso Canyon for the last 5 years. And it's been a battle. My family has been horribly affected by the worst gas blowouts in the history of the United States. And yet I still have hope for our ability to shut down Aliso Canyon. With all of us working together, we'll be able to do it. That's why I want to thank you for taking time tonight to join us. Okay, webinars are even more important now as a way to stay informed and engaged, especially as we are all under quarantine in our homes. Before we jump into it though, we want to say a word about the coronavirus, okay, because it's very crazy times. We are all very concerned about our communities, especially those routinely poisoned by fossil fuels, including our own community. We are facing this global pandemic as a group, and we are all trying to get through it. Research shows that communities living on the front lines like we are of fossil fuels have many underlying health conditions like asthma, autoimmune disorders, and many other diseases that make the coronavirus even more dangerous for us. That is because of the air pollution we are forced to breathe living next to these facilities. And who is likely to be exposed to air quality in the US, poor air quality? Low-income families, communities of color. Who's the most likely to die prematurely due to reduced air quality? The elderly. That becomes 10 times more likely for Black children. Black people also suffer the highest death rates from heart disease. The former Environmental Protection Agency, I've got to look at her name, Gina McCarthy, said, "This crisis isn't simply a public health issue. It's directly related to social equity and environmental justice. It is directly related to the fight for clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment and healthy communities. COVID-19 is affecting all of us, our health and our way of life. But low-income communities and communities of color face added risk. We have a lot of work to do to clean up our air and to fight to shut down Aliso Canyon and end neighborhood drilling in solidarity with communities across Los Angeles that are suffering just like us. They are in different socioeconomic status than those in the north side of San Fernando Valley. Yeah, definitely. We are here to continue loving and supporting each other. More solidarity is needed in this time of crisis. To end injustice, we will need a real Green New Deal that shuts down fossil fuels while demanding a just transition for communities and to a greener economy that doesn't extract fossil fuels and poison our communities, our neighborhoods, our schools. I will end this section on the coronavirus to announce Dr. Jeffrey Nordella, one of our featured speakers tonight. He will be holding a COVID-19 health update this Saturday, March 28th at 1 p.m. You have to tune in. His update will emphasize treatment options and tips for how to engage with your own medical provider, because they don't always listen. So we really need to listen to that. If you or someone you know gets sick, you can find this info on the Food and Water Watch California Facebook page or RSVP at the link in this chat. Now for the agenda on this call. First, we will hear from community leaders, Kyoko Hibino, Matt Pakucko, and Alex Austin of Save Porter Ranch. We'll hear about their personal health stories to ground ourselves in the reality of the ongoing Aliso Canyon health crisis. Next, we will hear from Dr. Jeffrey Nordella to give us a health update on his research and investigations. Next, we will hear from Craig Galanta about the Saddleridge fire and what it showed us about benzene emissions. Craig will also provide a brief overview of the health study overseen by the LA County Department of Public Health. Finally, we will hear from Alex Nagy, California Director of Food and Water Action, about the increased use of Aliso Canyon, increased use, the health implications and of Aliso Canyon meet for also our energy use in California. We will take questions throughout the program, and please type your questions in the chat box as we go along. We will be keeping everyone on mute on this call except during the Q&A portions. I also want to state that we likely have SoCalGas employees on this call. Our organizing efforts make SoCalGas nervous for obvious reasons. We have done our best to remove them from this call, but expect they are still listening in. I will now pass it over to Matt Pakucko to kick off with a health story. Go for it, Matt.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Pakucko. I'm a 13-year victim of SoCalGas and victim of statewide and countywide corruption, and a 13-year resident of Porter Ranch, and also the co-founder of Save Porter Ranch, along with Kyoko here. Yeah, so I just want to say briefly, you know, Governor Newsom and Mayor Garcetti pretty much overnight shut down the entire state of California and the city of LA with no concern about anybody's anything, about how many billions of dollars it will cost, how much lives will be disrupted. They instantly shut it down because of a health issue. Yet they have told us the entire time since this blowout that they cannot shut down Aliso Canyon. They are lying. Anybody on here from those and their offices, you got liars for a boss. They're freaking lying. Okay, on to the reason they need to shut this place down. They are many. Okay, my heart palpitations started about 4 months into this gas blowout. I had no such issues before it. Perfectly healthy. Now, especially since, and I continued all through the blowout. But this year especially, since the early January, when they have really, you know, the regulations have been totally relaxed and SoCalGas can use that facility all they want, things have really gone off the charts for me. Heart palpitations way up, and so often and so intense that I'm afraid for my life many times, thought of calling 911 many times. One time I actually collapsed. I collapsed in the post office near here after spending all day outside at one of our protests. I collapsed in the post office. I did actually call 911 then. So yeah, this is all since the beginning of the blowout. I mean, since the beginning of this year. I have seen, this only happens in my house. Rare exception is it outside a house, only in the house here in Porter Ranch. I have seen several doctors. I've had stress tests, multiple EKGs at the doctor's office, echocardiogram, all sorts of blood tests, cholesterol tests, all that stuff. They can find nothing that would indicate why I would have this problem. I work out at the gym heavily, cardio workouts, never a problem. When I ask my doctors why this only happens at my house, I just get the blank stare. They have no answer. Once, because it's true, the doctors have no idea what they're dealing with here. So again, this, with rare exception, this only happens at home. One time, just recently, I was at a Porter Ranch Community School, at a Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council meeting, and I announced it on the microphone because I needed to do some public comment. I was having serious heart palpitations. And what I did right after I was done, I left that meeting. And many times when I've had these palpitations in my house in Porter Ranch, I leave the house, I had to leave, drive. As soon as I get down to Rinaldi, like 2 miles away, they will stop. Same thing that day, same thing many times. And I posted this on Facebook, plenty times. I've documented this. I've got my own EKG monitor at home. I've got pictures and videos of all the nosebleeds. This is just out of control, and especially since earlier this year when they started using that place again. Kyoko and I used to work out outside in Porter Ranch all the time. We rode our bikes all over the place. We'd take walks, especially middle of the night, all the time for years. But in the last couple of years, since we returned home from that exercise in the neighborhood, immediately palpitations, nosebleed, and all the rest. So we pretty much cut out outdoor activity in Porter Ranch for 2 years now. So that's one of the things that we have to deal with here in Porter Ranch. I know from talking to hundreds of other people that there's so much of this going on. It's just really out of control. Kyoko?
Hi, my name is Kyoko Hibino. 13 years resident of Porter Ranch, co-founder of Porter Ranch. And we moved to 2,000 feet away from the SoCalGas gate. In 2007, my health issues started showing up around 2009, and health symptoms like nosebleed, palpitations, which I have never had in my life before 2011. And most pronounced symptoms for me are nosebleed, both anterior and posterior, which is coming from inside, and cough, headaches, dizziness, palpitations, muscle and joint pain, shortness of breath, dehydrations, and UTI symptoms. Before the blowout, I have nosebleed a few times in a few months. And after the blowout, it exploded to worst time 10 times out of 30 days. And now I still have average of 4 times, it's like 6 times a month in bad months and twice a month for the good months. And only when I'm in Porter Ranch, except only a few times. 2 of our cats have a nosebleed.
Oh, yeah.
This is Champer. Has a nosebleed.
This was the same day that we were forced back into our homes after we were evacuated for 7 months. This is Romper a few months ago, just out of the blue. One day he's just covered with blood. Took him to the vet. There's no cuts, no injuries, no nothing. He just had a nosebleed like we do.
Actually, Champer and I have a nosebleed in the same morning, exact same morning, same time. And out of we have 5 cats. They're all diagnosed with asthma, and they're all indoor-only cat. And Champer was diagnosed with, this guy was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2017. And Fred, one of the other cat, he has autoimmune disease. And last year, I was diagnosed with precancerous conditions of breast cancer and had to have surgery to remove it. I was lucky to find out very early, as not everyone is lucky as I was. Now I will have 3 times higher risk of having a breast cancer rest of my life. And I don't have any family history of any kind of cancer. And I don't drink, I don't smoke. And when I ask community if anyone has experience of female health issues, including breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and more than 30 people responded in 24 hours that they have same kind of issues as I have. After extensive hormone tests and blood tests with holistic doctors and holistic oncologists, doctor did not find out the body's mechanism could create cancer or not resisting and fighting cancer formation in my body. So doctor concluded external cause such as environmental could cause the formation of abnormal cell in my body. And they recommended to do more intensive detox. Our house found elevated level of heavy metals and chemicals such as acrolein by health department, 95 percentile level of uranium was found in my hair, and multiple urine tests shows consistent high level of chemicals such as ethyl benzene. And it's been more than 10 years since I started having the symptoms. So I have been self-quarantine for 10 days, staying away from coronavirus, but more time next is Canyon, which raises another concern. I hope all stay healthy and well in this difficult and confusing time.
That's it.
That's it.
Hi guys, my name is Alex. I'm also a resident near Porter Ranch. I've lived here for over 20 years with my parents, and I've also been affected by the worst gas leak in United States history. A lot of the symptoms that you guys heard from Matt and Kyoko have been similar symptoms that I've dealt with as well, from the lightheadedness to the heart palpitations to the nausea. And it's interesting because you think that when you're going through those things, when it started years ago, you think, okay, well, maybe that'll just be until they cap it or until it's done or just a couple of years. But here we are over 5 years later almost, and a lot of those symptoms are still persistent and they've gotten worse, dealing with different autoimmune-like symptoms, being extremely sensitive to chemicals, extremely sensitive to foods, and not understanding why my body can't respond well to the good things that it needs, from fruits to vegetables to vitamin and mineral supplements that would actually help it detox properly. So I say that just to say that it's been a journey, and I know that I haven't been alone in it, which is reassuring or hopeful in a sense. Before I close, I just wanted to share that a lot of the frustrations that you guys have experienced with doctors who clearly haven't been trained in something like this, to treat something like this, there may have been a lot of dismissal on their part for this, because this is, when you think about it, this was a record-breaking disaster. Like, this is something that we have not seen before to this magnitude, and that's why it was the worst. And so a lot of the doctors that we're seeing, they don't know how to treat what we're going through because they need more research. I say that to say that you guys aren't alone if you're going through these symptoms. There's a community behind you who gather on a monthly basis to help encourage one another and look for deeper answers. And I'm just very glad to hear more from Dr. Nordella, who's with us this evening, who's going to be sharing more of the health effects that he's researched over time.
Dr. Nordella, this is Alex here. I'm passing the floor to you. If you can unmute yourself and put your video on, that would be great. I can help you with that. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, let me go with that. I don't know how to do the video, but let me just start by saying that very difficult to get all this done in 10 minutes. So we're just going to lay a little quick foundation, a couple of scientific principles we need to go through. One, this community was definitely exposed to polytoxins. Polytoxins are very difficult to kind of tease out one by one. So we'll go through those in a bit. How much and for how long? That's basic toxicology. So I divided this in my thinking, scientific thinking, into 3 phases. One was pre-blowout, second is blowout, and the third is post-blowout, which includes the repressurizing of the facility. So if we go through that, you have 11 organ systems in the body. These toxins, being polytoxins, affected the majority of your organ systems. The research actually shows it, but it does it on a one-by-one basis. When you mix toxins, you get synergistic toxicity, which means that the 2 drugs, 3 drugs, 4 drugs, if we give a patient, can have a almost logarithmic effect in the body on different organ systems to different degrees. So let's, instead of not talking or talking about what we don't know what you're exposed to, let's talk about what you were exposed to. I think it's important. And by the way, all the town halls and the white paper is available through Alex that anyone can have. It can be emailed to you. So what we were really exposed to is natural gas and all its constituents and toxins, including the VOCs, including benzene. Benzene seems to be one of the worst. We also are exposed to particulate matter. And when you talk about particulate matter, you have to talk about hazardous air pollutants. There can be thousands. No one in an evaluation of your communities ever evaluated the particulate matter and what they were consistent of. So we really don't know in regards to that, but we know you were exposed to particulate matters, which directly can cause respiratory tract illness. You were also exposed to heavy metals. How do we know? We did the hair testing. We found the uranium. We found the lithium. The lithium was confirmed by the LADWP that there was lithium in the water after we had measured it and alerted them to it. And then you were exposed to the big guy, which is toxic crude oil. So you were, in essence, in a shower of this. And it has been, I have interfaced with a few people at the Department of Public Health. It has been conceded that when they take all of these measurements and attempt to claim that you're okay because these measurements are below the California EPA level, you cannot account for the benzene that's in the liquid form of the toxic crude oil. So to use that argument is really not scientifically found. So therefore, that's why I went to the CBC study. The CBC checks one organ system, is basically your bone marrow, which belongs to the hematopoietic system. And we looked at 15 indices, and the 15 indices within a CBC have been studied in the past and have been noted under the influence of benzene to have effects. Now, you can look at the cell types, we can mention all of that. But what I did is ended up looking at 3 different zip codes. The zip code of Malibu, Thousand Oaks, and Lancaster, and looked at all of those together and used those as a control group. Believing that issues would be fairly equal throughout, then we looked at the 9.1 and compared it to the 9.1326. Now, in order to have the finding potentially of benzene toxicity, really only 1 out of 6 parameters need to be significant. This community of 9.1326, 6 out of 6 that were statistically significantly different. Attempting on that thought process of testing the adults, I went back and tried to look at the pediatric population, couldn't get the data, went to Quest, and ended up in a legal battle. We have been shut out, so the study has been fairly well halted. I will close really quick because there's time is of the essence here. As I would close really quick with the coronavirus, the CBC hematopoiesis is part of your immune system. The immune system, I believe, in the community has been compromised. Now, I will tell you this, that this does not only go for the pre-blowout, it goes for the blowout, it goes for the post-blowout, which they identified in the WIN study as having fugitive admissions, but no one followed through on finding that source. And you did have in October, I call it a biblical fire because there was nothing there to burn except dirt. So there had to be some source that was burning, which was a leak. That being said, if your immune system is chronically being exposed to these polytoxins, your immunity will not fare as well. When we look at the coronavirus on Saturday, everything really is tied to the immune system. So it'll be very interesting to see within this $25 million study if we have some form of an aspect that will assess this community's immune system. I will leave it there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Nardella. And we will definitely get to questions at the end. And I'm going to start to share my screen and pass it over to Craig. But Craig, if you want to get yourself ready and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, sure. Hi, Craig Galanta here. Hi, you should be able to hear me now. Does everyone hear me? Okay, great. Excellent. Oh, good. You got this picture here too. So, Alex, we're going to maybe come back to that one first in a second. But my name is Craig Galanta. I'm a 30-year resident of Porter Ranch. I live very near the facility here, just very near. I'm a neighbor of Matt and Kyoko's and Deirdre as well. Anyway, I do have a disclaimer. I am a member of the CAG, but the attorneys at Public Health require me to say that I'm speaking on my behalf. I am not speaking on behalf of the CAG. Some CAG members may be on this call as well, and they can chime in on the Q&A. So if we can.
Would you explain what the CAG is?
Yeah, sure. So let's jump back. The consent decree put aside $25 million for the health study. And as Dr. Nardella pointed out, but what is lost on most folks in the community and outside the community is there's only 13 million of the 25 that is allocated for the initial 3 years. After the third year, the SOC, or Scientific Oversight Committee, which is another group, will decide if the health study should continue or not. So the initial spend is 13 million, although it's often referred to as a $25 million health study. So I don't have a lot of time, and there's two topics I wanted to cover. The ground fire that Dr. Nardella mentioned, and I'll give an update on the CAG, Community Advisory Group, and our hopes this health study delivers. I do want to stress that we are an advisory group back to the decision makers. We don't control, this committee doesn't control what will eventually be studied. But the things that have been brought up earlier, as well as Dr. Nardella's mentioned about like the immune system, those are really good things, and we would advocate for those things. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I'll do the ground fire first. Thanks, Alex. So many of you know, especially if you live in the area, a large brush fire blew through the North San Fernando Valley called the Saddleridge Fire. And a mysterious ground fire was discovered days after the fire was extinguished and gone through the community. Well, the big fire wasn't extinguished, but it had gone clearly through the community. Folks had returned to the neighborhoods, etc. And on routine patrol, SoCalGas, this flame that was coming up from the ground. SoCalGas reported to the media, we don't know what this is. The dirt is on fire. And that's like verbatim what they said to the media. So the CAG was going about its normal business and having dialogue amongst themselves in respect to the health study. We became very concerned for the community's health and safety regarding this fire. So 2 conference calls were held. Can we go to the next slide, Alex? And we had several of the agencies were involved, hazmat, county fire, DPH. We asked them to pull this together. They were kind enough to do that. AQMD was here. So what did we learn about this fire? And it was described by the fire captain that this continuous blue and orange flame, approximately 4 by 4 square, about 2 feet high. It sounded to me like what you might find in an outdoor fire pit fed by natural gas. It just was described similarly. Keep in mind that there are no shrubs, there's no grass, there's no organic fuel in the area because it all had burned in the prior few days from the Saddleridge fire. They also went on to tell us that they were mystified by what was fueling this fire because there were no pipelines or structures from the facility nearby that could be easily explained by a leaking pipe or a leaking well. The fire was observed for 2 days. The LA County Fire Department extinguished it with a bit of water. And then very perplexing to us is they filled this hole on the hillside with dirt. They're not capping the leak. It's going to ooze out and you're not going to block the dirt. So to try and understand what was going on, the AQMD was involved and others, and they took several samples of soil and air in the area. But only one observation was taken in the community, and this gave us great concern. So if there's no fuel, there's no bush, there's no trees, there's no grass burning, there's no identifiable pipeline underneath where this came from, the only logical explanation of the fuel source to this fire is a fugitive emission. And as Dr. Nordella mentioned just a moment ago, in a prior wind study of the area, it was demonstrated that there were fugitive emissions from an idle field. So what's happening logically is the storage gas is emanating to the surface and is just free going out into the atmosphere and into our neighborhoods. And the fact that there was a fire that ignited it became evidence of one of these sources. So I'm going to move quickly through some of these now. Go ahead. And as Dr. Nordella likes to do, let's do some foundational viewpoints here. So benzene is a carcinogen that we know is up on this hill, and it's one that we do focus on a lot. So two important measurements to keep as a reference. Acute for like a 1 hour exposure, the Cali EPA says you should be exposed to no more than 8 parts per billion. For chronic exposure, or for 8 hours, should be only 1 part per billion. But when they go ahead, next slide, they investigated what was happening at this fugitive fire, the benzene exposures are quite alarming. So on October 15th, the day after the fire was extinguished, at the source of the fire, they found 88 parts per billion. So 10 times higher than the acute 1 hour exposure. And it was measured again 4 days later, and it dropped to 1.3. No explanation of what was done, no understanding of what caused the reduction was provided on our conference calls. What is also of great concern is this benzene is finding its way into the community. Of the one benzene observation, which was 1 mile away in Porter Ridge Park, it was 1.2 billion. We'll get to that in a second. But also in the discovery, go ahead and go to the next slide, we found, because of their due diligence to figure out where the source was, we found great deals of benzene in the field that are in our, adjacent to our neighborhoods. So quickly here, and I don't have a whole lot of time, this is the site, this is a slide from the AQMD. And if you see on the right side, the location of the fire leak, because of those very unique fire roads up there and routes for the SoCalGas workers, it wasn't difficult to find this on, go ahead and next slide, it wasn't difficult to find this on Google Maps. So you should recognize that road. It looks like a Grand Prix course, but so the fugitive emission fire was on the hillside off to the top right, and 650 feet away, just to help everyone understand the magnitude of what's going up on this hill, which we never would have known because no one's telling us. There are these, what they call the Porter gathering tanks. Not completely sure what's in there, but the AQMD's testing, because they were looking for, could those tanks be leaking over and causing the fire? They looked at what's inside. What did they discover? 4.7 million parts per billion of benzene. So, you know, I'll save the math for others, but that is way above the acute 1 hour exposure. And we never would have known this if this fire and this investigation didn't take place. And these are huge tanks. Go ahead, next slide. 40 feet in diameter is that tank. Huge. So how close is this to the community? So I chose the Highlands Porter Ranch because that's often talked about as a place for where there was a lot of symptomatology, a lot of injured people, a lot of evacuations, and it's only 1.2 miles away. And keep in mind, at the peak, at the site of those observations made, 88 parts per billion of benzene. Very concerning. Go to the next slide, please. So this might get a little confusing, so just bear with me here, please. And I need one more slide when you can. Here, it looks like it's coming across. Okay, great. So if you recall, I said, oops, go back one. If you recall, I said that they took only one measurement in the community, and that's the bottom one. It says benzene 1.2 parts per billion, and that was taken in nearby Porter Ridge Park, which is often referred to as ET Park here locally. And that's exactly 1 mile, as Google calculated it for me, from the admissions fire. So the admissions fire at the same day was measuring 1.3 billion. And what concerned me was the attrition of only 1 mile was very, very minimal, right? It was 1.3 up on the hill, a mile away, and in the community, it was 1.2. What was the local benzene level when they noted it was 88 parts per billion at the fire site? No measurements were taken. If they weren't provided to the community. So this gave the CAG great concern. We asked public health to resolve this and take a leadership role in discovering what is impacting the community. One CAG member wrote quite honestly, a very poignant and inspiring email to public health saying, you need to check this out. You need to lead on this. This is a health issue. The CAG got a response back from public health basically saying this isn't their jurisdiction and they're pushing it off to some of the other agencies that we spoke to. We have not gotten any resolution. The community needs to call out these agencies, include public health, and say, take the lead. Just as Matt explained how public health has taken the lead, not only in Los Angeles County, but nationally, on how to fight the coronavirus, they could take the lead and bring about urgency on a matter like this. So the public needs to, the community needs to make sure that we are looked at and taken, and these sort of things are taken into consideration. I apologize, I want to move quickly now because I don't want to take up too much time. Let's move on to an update on the CAG's efforts towards the health study. So the CAG, again, we're just an advisory group. We're a handful of volunteers in the community. And we came up with 3 basic pillars of what we're looking to do as an advocate for the community. We're advocating that the health study have a vision of very robust, multifaceted examination of both the short and long-term health effects, which I'm sure you would all agree with. We want full consideration for the duration, quantity, and combination. Dr. Nardella referred to it as what is the uncharted waters of the combination of these toxins. So, and what makes it even more concerning is we don't know some of these chemicals because SoCalGas hasn't advised. We also felt compelled that the study include exposures and impacts, health impacts before, during, and after the blowout. Quick update on the membership of the CAG. There was originally 19. We're down to 15. We were into this about 6 months now. 3 were removed because they were not participating, not representing the communities that they're supposed to. We've since backfilled those outreaches, and 1 was removed for a conflict of interest. And the 4th one did resign. So that's where we're at 15. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk about some key accomplishments. We already talked about, we trimmed the CAG membership. But this is the one that we feel that has so far been the most impactful. We've championed that the SOC, and that's the Scientific Oversight Committee, that it be majority of independent scientists. The way the consent decree was established that allocated the total $25 million was there would be 7 state or county science people assigned to the SOC, and they would steer the whole study. To make sure that there are no political agendas or any influences, we argued for and advocated for the majority must be independent. So originally, Department of Public Health said, well, we'll have one. You guys can pick one. And we took them to task. We had good debates, and we came to a resolution that there are actually going to be 9 independents versus the 7 state and county appointed as part of the consent decree. We feel that that is an important step to push any political agendas out or perceptions of political agendas so that it can be an independent, fact-based study. We met with the leadership. We were frustrated, so we met with the leadership, including Director Barbara Ferrer, who we were seeing on TV a lot. We explained to her what we felt were the drivers of why the community has such distrust with public health. And we didn't just complain, we offered very solid suggestions of how to repair and move forward in an objective and science-based way. We shared that with public health. Next slide, please. It's one thing to complain, it's another thing to offer solutions. So we really tried to do that. We insisted that the process of this health study, it has to be community-centric, as it should be. But we felt that it was critically important that the process start with DPH holding its own town halls to address head-on the community's trust issues with their past performance. As many of you know that are on this call, it was scheduled for last week, the first one. There may have been planned to be more, but it had to be postponed due to the COVID-19 concerns. We have had some limited dialogue with public health because, as you can imagine, their plates are full right now because of COVID. And if you could go one slide forward, please. There we go, as I get this back. So sorry for the delay. Go back one, Alex. Thank you. So the other accomplishment is, and it took a while, we now have CAG representation on the steering committee, which is the primary decision makers in steering the whole project. So the community outreach was deferred until public health meets with the community, has that heart-to-heart, tries to rebuild trust, because if we don't have trust, we did not see a good path towards getting information and insights from the community, what they want in the health study. So once we have that direct meeting with public health, the CAG will then be doing a whole lot more outreach, and you'll hear more about that through social media, emails, your neighborhood council, et cetera. Going quickly, let me wrap up. The next CAG meeting is April 27th at 5:30. Because of COVID, it's going to be an online meeting, as you can imagine. It should be open to the public. It's always been our ask that it be open to the public. Exactly how that's going to work out, we just simply don't know yet. It hasn't been fully vetted. We encourage everyone that would like to voice their concerns and speak up at these meetings. And I hope you have the back of the CAG, because we are trying to represent you. We are a completely volunteer group. So yelling at us is not a good idea, but we want to hear from you. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to take it over from here. Thank you so much, Craig. Let's see if y'all can hear me. Does that work out? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I am going to just take a second here. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go just a tiny bit over on time because that's just how it is. And in the meantime, we're going to just push it over a little bit into the end just so we can make sure we can ask all of your questions. So just to give a big overview of the Aliso Canyon gas blowout, we essentially had The worst gas blowout in US history happened right here in LA City and in LA County. It lasted for 4 months, sprayed over 100,000 metric tons of methane and other toxic gases down into the community, including showering crude oil onto the community. And despite families being relocated, we saw up to 25,000 people leave their homes. A lot of people really couldn't leave their homes and had to shelter in place essentially during this crisis. And it led to immediate health problems. Immediately within the first few days, we started seeing reports of people getting sick, bloody noses, rashes, pets getting sick. And of course, during this entire disaster, a lot of people did pass away and a lot of pets passed away as well. And so right away, we saw people dying left and right. And now, 5 years later, we're still seeing a massive health crisis in this community that's only exacerbated by the increased use of this facility and the refusal of our elected officials and government agencies to take action and close this down. And so I just wanted to show some images of what our fight has looked like from one of the very first rallies we did in the community to just recently, where we have blockaded the Aliso Canyon storage facility, and we transitioned from calling on Governor Brown to Governor Newsom to shut Aliso Canyon down. And we just want to give a shout out to all of our partners and all of our allies and friends and volunteers who have been on the front lines with us. It really makes a huge difference to have you with us in this fight. And we're so excited to have you on this call to learn how you can continue to engage and participate with us. So the main thrust of my talk right now is just about the insane and increased use of Aliso Canyon. So really in the last few months, since November of 2019, we've seen a massive spike of its use. And again, it really has real-time world consequences and health impacts for people living near this facility still to see this facility being used. This is what the SoCalGas distribution system looks like. A lot of our gas, 90% of it is imported, and it comes from fracking throughout the Western United States, all the way as far out as Texas or Wyoming and Colorado or even Canada. And just 10% of the gas we consume here in California comes from the Central Valley from oil drilling in our own state. And this is what the SoCalGas system looks specifically once it enters the border here in Nevada and Arizona, and from about Kings County down to Mexico. This is the SEMPRA or SoCalGas and San Diego Gas and Electric system. And currently they have 4 active storage facilities at Aliso Canyon in Playa del Rey, the Ana Rancho facility in Santa Clarita, and the Goleta gas storage facility right next to UC Santa Barbara. And some of the things that we've learned in the last 2 years, especially from expert testimony, specifically Mei Liu gave testimony during the plaintiff's discovery, and basically said that gas samples are taken at the border as they're coming into California, and they are tested for their composition levels, and that at that testing, as it comes in from out of state, they are finding that the gas benzene level is from 1 part per million to 9 parts per million. And so that is extremely alarming because, as Craig mentioned earlier, the safety for gas is at 1 part per billion, according to the California EPA. But the World Health Organization says there are absolutely no safe levels of benzene whatsoever. So really the community is, whenever leaks happen and when the blowout happened, they were exposed to benzene levels that were 9,000 times higher than what the California EPA deems safe. This also has implications for the gas in your home when you cook with your stove or your oven, and we'll talk about that as well. So this is a brief overview of energy reliability in Southern California as it relates to gas. And I have done a much longer talk on energy reliability and what's going on with the pipelines and the gas storage system that we can definitely share with you as well. But big picture, we have enough gas because we import so much, 90% of our gas in from out of state. we have enough gas in that pipeline capacity alone to meet our needs every single day. The total amount of gas we can bring into California is 6.7 billion cubic feet per day. And our peak summer demand is 3.7 billion cubic feet, and our peak winter demand is 4.9 billion cubic feet. And this is according to the 2016 gas report. In the 2018 gas report, the total pipeline capacity just went down a little bit, but still massive compared to what our needs actually are. A couple years ago, 2 pipelines burst. One exploded because, just like Aliso Canyon, they weren't taking care of their infrastructure. SoCalGas has let their pipelines basically erode to the point of explosion. And so it did create a small reduction in our import capacity, but just 0.4 billion cubic feet per day compared to what they can normally bring in. And that's important because essentially what has happened is that the use of Aliso Canyon has gone up despite those pipelines being out and returned to service. After those pipelines were returned to service, we saw a massive uptick in the use of Aliso Canyon. So overall, the state has adopted 31 mitigation measures to improve coordinating the gas system so that we don't need to use Aliso Canyon on a daily basis. And Aliso Canyon in 2016 was issued to be used as an asset of last resort. And in 2019, just as I said, despite return of those pipelines to the system, the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, actually weakened the Aliso Canyon withdrawal protocols, giving SoCalGas more authority to use Aliso Canyon as they please. And the CPUC is also playing with the numbers and saying that imported pipeline capacity is a measly 2.8 billion cubic feet capacity instead of their recognized 6.66 from the gas report. And so the Public Utilities Commission is essentially in cahoots with the gas company to shorten the supply artificially on paper to justify the increased use of Aliso Canyon. And again, I did a whole other webinar in this where I went a lot slower and talked about it. But this is just generally how it's broken down. So since Governor Newsom has taken office, we've seen a massive spike. In 2016, the first winter after Aliso Canyon was out of commission, we saw it only used for 2 days at 0.1 billion cubic feet per day. Really, it should not have been used then, so small in compared to the average daily demand. Then a year later, and this is when the pipelines went out, and still despite those pipelines being out, not much of an increase here, only 7 days compared to 2, and 1.14 compared to 0.5, a 228% increase, but still small compared to the massive jump that we see once Governor Newsom takes office. So as soon as he takes office, the first winter, we saw the gas use go from 30 to 37 days and 14 billion cubic feet, a 1,200% increase. And then this winter, we've really seen just unprecedented use of Aliso Canyon almost on a daily basis, and almost to the point where Aliso Canyon, instead of being used as an asset of last resort, is actually being prioritized, and on often many days being the only gas storage facility being used in the gas storage system, which is absolutely ridiculous since we do not need to use any storage at all, and our pipeline capacity shows that. So just to break this down even cruder, combining Governor Brown's last 2 years in office and Governor Newsom's first 2 seasons here in office, 9 withdrawal days versus 88, 1.64 compared to 32. Overall, a 2,000% increase compared to Brown's last 2 seasons and Governor Newsom's. So we are really pissed off because this means that every day people are unnecessarily being exposed to benzene and a whole host of other chemicals. And this really is not just about the gas system, right? California is going to 100% clean energy. That is mandated. And we're already seeing a massive trend and shift in the way our energy utilities are procuring clean energy. And this is a really extensive list of just some things we've been working on and pushing and promoting. And two things I really want to highlight here at the end. One is are the decisions around replacing home gas appliances with electric. This is actually going to be a major important hurdle for us to cross in order to get off gas altogether. And then finally, we are engaged heavily in a study the city of Los Angeles is doing, looking on how to get to 100% clean energy. And we demand that we get there by 2030 to be in line with the climate science. So let's talk about how this all matters to you, because a lot of you don't live on the front lines of Aliso Canyon or a gas storage facility. And if you do, you're probably already very involved with us. But how does this matter? Why should you care about this? So the gas appliances are one of the biggest polluters in your home. If you use your gas stove or your gas oven, even if you're just using it once a week, you're extremely lowering the air quality in your home. So it makes for really poor air quality. Many studies have been done on this. So this is exposing you and your family and your pets to very high concentrations of nitrogen dioxide, formaldehyde, and carbon monoxide. But what we found is a lot of these studies aren't even looking at benzene. So when you're talking about, is this bringing benzene into my home? Well, if you just pull out your SoCalGas bill, you will in fact see that you have a disclaimer there saying you're being exposed to benzene and other carcinogenic chemicals. And according to the EPA, this exposure can be especially concerning for children, people with asthma, those with heart or lung disease, because they are more susceptible to the health effects caused by indoor air pollution. So what are some solutions to this? And I'm not going to say don't cook or don't do those things, because obviously we're all quarantined and we're all, we have to cook, we have to eat. So some things you need to really do are vent. Use your vent hood. And if that's not enough, sometimes that cannot be enough, especially in small apartments or in studios. I live in a small apartment. I make sure to open up all my windows when I'm cooking so that the air can flow through and I'm not creating a bad indoor air situation for me and my family. You can also, if you have the money or you have the resources or you have the know-how, switch out for all electric. There are more programs becoming available every day where you can do switches to electric stoves, electric ovens, and that would make a huge improvement on your indoor air quality. So who are we trying to influence with all of this? Let's get back to the main goals here of shutting down Aliso Canyon. So that is Governor Newsom. He's the one who can do this. And just as Matt has said, right, Governor Newsom's shutting down the entire state of California in the face of this massive pandemic, rightfully so. But he should also take immediate action to close Aliso Canyon.
He's a liar is what I said.
Yeah, he's a liar. Thanks, Matt. And his reelection is coming up in 2022. And so in our campaign and in our work, we think it's very important to move him by that date. And we can do this by continuing to organize. He wants to be the president, so he has ambitions for higher political office. And he oversees the California Public Utilities Commissioner, and he appoints the 5 commissioners, and he hires and fires the executive director. So his record on the issue to date is that he wrote a letter to the Public Utilities Commission to plan for the expedited shutdown of Aliso Canyon. But this hasn't gone far enough. It's really just kicking the can down the road. And so what we want him to do is 2 things. One, reverse the withdrawal protocol immediately, going back to using it as an asset of last resort. And to number 2, put a timeline to shut down Aliso Canyon in 1 year with an executive order. Essentially, we want this place shut down by the end of 2021. And there are a couple of things that you all can do to take action. So we are going to be doing a lot of call-in days, social media actions, and with all of us stuck at home, it's really important to sign up for our mobile list so that we can get you to know about those things. So what you want to do is text Newsom to 69866. We're also helping to make arrangements for VOC and heavy metal testing. If you want to get tested and understand what's going on in your body, please email me. And we have a ton more actions coming up in 2020, life permitting, to support LA's transition to 100% clean energy in LA, in addition to closing Aliso Canyon. So please make sure you're texting to opt in to take action. And one other exciting thing coming up is Earth Week 2020 is happening April 20th through 24th. And as part of that, we will do a call action to Governor Newsom on Aliso Canyon, as well as a bunch of other fun stuff. So I think we're ready to move over to the questions section, and let me take a look at that. Okay, so folks want to put their questions into the chat. We are happy to take them there. And here's a question about electric cooktops are less energy efficient than fuel. That's actually not true. You're wasting way less heat and energy in transferring, especially with induction stoves. They're extremely energy efficient, and they don't waste heat, and so they're actually better. Induction cooktops rock. Okay. Let's see other questions. What do you think motivates Newsom to not shut down Aliso Canyon? This is a question from Susan. Matt, you want to take that?
You said what motivates him to not shut it down?
Yes.
Oh, let's see. His family goes way back for many centuries into the oil and gas relationships. It's all political and it's all money. It's that simple. It's the same old song and dance. You probably have some more details about that, Alex, but that's
yeah, he's
like
taken
the
over
big
30 grand from Sempra just for his last race for governor. So he's definitely taken their money. One thing that we've heard has kind of been working on the guilt trip front is the mom and dad angle, the parents angle. He has, 5 young kids of his own, and especially we're talking about this impacting children. We're hoping to push on him for that. Other questions in the chat? So the next question is, what approximate mile radius is considered affected by Aliso Canyon? So one of the numbers that we're going off of is based on something the LA County Department of Public Health put out, which is that they were getting calls as far as 12 miles away, saying that they were feeling sick during the gas blowout. And we know from research that had been done during the gas blowout that elevated methane levels were going as far down as Orange County and being tested at UC Irvine. JPL was also taking tests and measurements from their area as well. And so this had a massive impact. 12-mile radius is large, but not large enough, most likely. And we think the entire San Fernando Valley, Simi Valley, and Santa Clarita Valleys were all affected by this. Question from Dave. So the SOC has been selected. Have they been meeting? That's a question for Craig.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Dave. We were told by public health that they were very, very close, and they had like a couple of loose ends on figuring out some last folks. We have since not heard from them, so I don't believe that they have officially announced to everyone who is on the SOC. I do know that we have agreed on 9 independents. I suggest that you contact DPH. I don't know if that's Katie Butler, who was your point person, or Dr. Paul Simon, but one of those two should be able to answer your question directly. I do believe the SOC has been firmed up. Who exactly is on it, I don't know.
Great. Any other questions? Question, why did the use of gas spike when Newsom took office? So this is because under his leadership, the strict withdrawal protocols that had been in place were weakened, and SoCalGas has been slowly pushing, not slowly, but heavily pushing the California Public Utilities Commission to let them get Aliso Canyon back to normal operations since the gas blowout happened. And so they've been pushing. A change of administration is a good opportunity to get what you want and take advantage. And so that has all been going on. Newsom either has very little knowledge of it or is complicit in it. And so our next step is to expose this and bring this to his office directly. Next question, how can I help bring this message to my neighborhood in the South Bay? How may I help Porter Ranch residents beyond calling Newsom? Should we speak at AQMD, Public Land Commission meeting, bring up this danger? Matt, would you like to take that?
I'm sorry, I think people are sending messages privately to you, Alex, so we don't see them in the everyone chat. So what was the question? Okay, I see it now. You need to get involved with Save Porter Ranch. We meet regularly. We work out different campaigns on how to get this place shut down, how to educate the community, how to get more people involved. We meet twice a month. We have an email list. If you just send an email to saveporterranch@aol.com and tell us you want to, be at our meetings or get on the list and everything, we'll do all that. I mean, we'll get you dialed in. So yeah, without putting like specific things right here now, that's the big picture on how to really dig into this and join us in the fight.
Great. I see another question about the Playa del Rey gas storage facility. So hi, all of our amazing Protect Playa Now folks. There's a coalition out dealing to shut down the Playa del Rey storage facility. They're called Protect Playa Now, made of Food and Water Action, Indivisible California 43, and Bayona Institute. And right now, the main focus is getting Mayor Garcetti on the side of closing Playa. So that just to say, Mary Beth asked if the Playa del Rey gas storage facility, if the tanks at Aliso are similar, and have we discovered or determined what's actually in those storage tanks? The answer is no, we don't know exactly what's in them. And that's something that we still have to do some research we have to figure out. Another question I see here about how are we going to change Newsom? We're going to change him by getting in his face as much as possible. So to preface the letter that he sent the Public Utilities Commission after his first year of being in office, that followed us doing intense bird dogging actions where every time he came to Los Angeles, we were there, we followed him. And he had been very familiar with this because we used this tactic for the year he was running for Governor Newsom to be the governor, and the year after he won. And that really did help move him. We're looking to really escalate our direct action and our pressure tactics. It's challenging, obviously, right now because we are all stuck at home, but that's not stopping a lot of other folks from going after Newsom with car protests. You may have been seeing things like hundreds of cars showing up at Newsom's house and them all laying on the horn and honking as a way to keep up social distancing, but keep up the pressure. So we're very excited at our next meeting. We're going to be talking about a lot of these things to help put pressure. And that's what we'll be doing. Yeah, Mary Beth, Craig mentioned the benzene levels in the storage tanks. That's because the Department of Public Health and the AQMD disclosed that, but they haven't disclosed anything else.
Let me clarify that question. Storage, the gas storage in general is not in storage tanks. It is in underground natural rock formations. That's why all those emissions can happen anytime, anywhere, even miles from the facility. The tanks that Craig mentioned is something more specific to a specific wellhead that that is possibly part of that fugitive fire that happened. Two separate things.
Yeah, those tanks are carrying chemicals or crude oil, and we're not exactly sure what's in there. So another question here from Susan. Oh, actually, let's go to Ravi. What are the state legislators that can represent Aliso Canyon saying on this, and how can I help remotely from San Diego? Actually, San Diego, Ravi, is home to Senator Ben Waso, who is the chair of the Senate Committee on Energy and Utilities. And so he is a very important target for us if we want any accountability around in the Senate legislature of California around the increased use of Aliso Canyon or the shorting of the numbers to justify the increased use. He's a big target on the list. However, he is squarely in the pocket of the gas company. So everything we've done with him in the past has been difficult. He needs to be hearing from his constituents to hold SoCalGas and Sempra accountable and essentially stop using Aliso Canyon as an asset of first resort. And so we can follow up, Ravi, more about that. And then a question from Susan. What happened to that letter, I think, from California Department of Energy to close Aliso Canyon in 10 years, which is now 6 years from now? So that letter was actually sent by Governor Brown to the California Energy Commission, and the letter that Governor Newsom has just recently sent has superseded that, I believe, and is basically calling for the expedited closure of Aliso Canyon, meaning faster than 10 years, which is why we're aggressively pushing for a 1-year shutdown and hoping to get him to commit to that by the end of this year so that it's getting shut down in 2021. Okay, other questions?
Alex, is Craig.
Yeah, go for it, Craig.
Dr. Dave asked a question about providing input from his survey, his health survey. Dr. Dave, you can reach out to me if you like after the call, and I think that would be very worthwhile to get in front of probably the SOC members, and perhaps we could do that through the CAG. Happy to help you in any way we can.
Great. So it's been really a lot of fun and really amazing to be spending all of this time with all of you. If you give me a minute here, I will just put the link to register for the coronavirus update with Dr. Nardello, where you will get to hear a lot more from him. We have an hour and a half for him to present his research and do Q&A. So I'm putting that in the chat right now. So please sign up. We'd love to have you again and talk and chat with you again on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And since this is being recorded, we will follow up with all of you with a link for this. And we just thank you so much for taking the time to get involved with us. And if you haven't yet, please sign up for our text action. You can text Aliso to 69866 or Newsom to 69866. Either keyword will clue you in, and I'll put that in the chat one more time. So text Aliso to 69866, and you'll see a lot of great ways to plug in. Yes, Matt.
Also, I just put in the chat the link to the Save Porter Ranch email list. So just click on that and put yourself on our email list, and you will be staying up to date. Huh? Yeah, you get our newsletter and all the actions and meetings and all that stuff.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time again, and we'll be in touch shortly about how you can take further action. Take care, y'all.